On today's episode of Locked On 76ers, the Philadelphia 76ers win their third game in a row. 104-101 the final score over the Atlanta Hawks, and it was the return of the big man, Joel Embiid. What did we see? We'll break it all down next, right here, Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome, you are Locked On 76ers. I'm Devon Givens from 97.5 The Fanatic Radio in Philadelphia, alongside my co-host and partner, as always, from theinquirer.com. That will be Keith Pompey, Sixers beat writer. What's up, Keith?
What's good, D? How you doing, brother?
Doing all right, man. Good win by the squad tonight over the Atlanta Hawks. We'll break it all down, talk about Joel Embiid, and again, look ahead to Tobias Harris a little bit also. Very good play from him over these last few games, so we'll break it all down with the win, Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, talk about it all right here on Locked On 76ers. We thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. And, of course, it's free and available wherever you do get your podcasts, including right here on YouTube at Locked On 76ers. Well, Keith, 3-point win, down by as much as 16 points. The Sixers were early on. They trailed the Atlanta Hawks. Both teams played on Sunday night, so both had to travel. And the Atlanta Hawks got off to a much better start, up by 16. And with the 76ers, they figured it out, closed it at the half by 4, tied it up after 3 at 81 apiece, and then winning in the fourth quarter by 3 points overall. And they walk away with a 104-101 victory. Embiid had 30 in his comeback, 8 boards, 7 assists, 2 block shots, 2 steals. Shake Milton, once again, phenomenal. 21 points, Keith. 7 assists, 5 rebounds, no turnovers in 39 minutes and 33 seconds. And Tobias Harris, the double-double, 24 and 10 on the night for the veteran forward. Keith, they got the win. You talked about it on yesterday's episode that you needed to see against a better opponent. How did you think they fared in this one with the better opponent?
I was impressed. I was really impressed. The thing is, the thing that really impressed me is that like all the guys that needed to step up stepped up. Like Shake started off a little slow, but then he got it going a little bit, right? Embiid, it seemed like, I know he was trying to get his groove together a little bit, but it seems like he was trying too much to fit in my opinion. Tobias Harris came back, did what he had to do. Matisse Thybulle, he only played 8 minutes. But he was out there and he was a plus 12, a game high plus 12. It got to a point where DeJounte Murray and Trae Young were attacking DeAnthony Melton. They weren't going after Matisse when they were on the floor together. So, these guys stepped up and they all played well. And, I feel like it was a good win. It was a quality win. Let's face it. The Sixers were in 6th place. Atlanta was in 5th. That was a matchup for the Sixers, and they played well, and they proved to me that they are a quality team. They don't have all their stars back, but that was a quality win.
It was against a good Atlanta team who did have all of their players. Clint Capella had the night off on Sunday in their loss to the Miami Heat. He came back tonight, and he had 16 rebounds, probably to go 10 points, double-double for him. All 5 of their starters scored in double figures, 16 for Justin Holiday off the bench, all in the first half, Keith. So it looked like they were going to run away with this game, at least make it tough for the Sixers. They would score, and then Atlanta would go on their run. And the Sixers would score and make a little bit of a run, and Atlanta would counter that. And again, it just seemed like it was heading in that way, but they did not let up. They kept going. They kept picking away at it. And one of the things that they did, Keith, that Doc Rivers talked about it after the game, you saw it in game, they went zone. And when they went zone, that changed kind of the complexion of their defense and helping turn things around and go the other way. Shots weren't falling as easily. The turnovers picked up. They had 11 turnovers in the second half, Keith. Overall, Atlanta did, and the Sixers only 6. to help lead and going the other way to get some extra baskets, get some extra shot opportunities. The Sixers were a +8. They had 8 more shot attempts than did no 12 more shot attempts, pardon me, than did the Atlanta Hawks. So that was a good defensive performance from them in the second half to turn things over a little bit more and get themselves back into the game, especially in the second quarter. But in the second half, winning it the way that they did.
I would agree. I would have to agree. But you know what's funny to me, man? Um, how this is the NBA, and you're supposed to have the best athletes in the world, and teams just crumble against the zone. You know what I mean? And but
Not
it gets
everyone can shoot.
that, and that's what it is. That's what it is. It's kind of like nowadays, like, I mean, you think about it, back in the day, they made you play man to man, but it was like, but at the same time, it was like there were better shooters back in the day, right? But now, like, not everyone can shoot, and they do these zones, and it's kind of like the cheat code, so to speak. Like, you go to a zone, and certain teams they can't shoot, and it's just it's mind boggling. But you know, it is smart to do it. And then, Doc Rivers said one thing, like, a guy like Matisse Thybulle, and he played in the zone defense in college, and he was a defensive player of the year. And
Yeah, he
so
was
he
a wizard.
knows how to navigate that zone, and play very well in it. So, it really worked out for him. But it's kind of like the cheat code. But hey, man, if it's working, it's working. You know what I mean?
It's part of the league, and once they implemented it and allowed it back into the NBA, you do what you need to do. Like Bill Belichick does every single week, he goes up against whatever that opponent is, and he adjusts his game plan to that opponent. And if it called for it in this one, then it called for it. And one thing that Doc Rivers mentioned, which is, you have to give a hat tip to him. He and the coaching staff recognized when they watched the film from Miami and Atlanta on Sunday that they played, I think he said 80% of the game in zone. Miami did against Atlanta, and it worked. Again, they got an 8-point victory on the road against the Hawks team that has Trae Young, who we know can go off from beyond, a much better shooter over the course of his career as he's gone along. DeJounte Murray, DeAndre Hunter, a much better shooter. And that's one of the reasons, too, Keith. It's funny with their offseason that you let someone like Kevin Huerter go when he's such a really good shooter and a zone buster, if you will. When we say not a lot of teams, not a lot of guys can shoot, that guy can shoot, and he's doing so with the Sacramento Kings right now. So that might have been a personnel mistake by them, but it worked out for the Sixers, and that's something that we've seen it happen against them. Last night, they did it against the opposition, and it worked in their favor this time.
Yeah, but you know what? As much as that zone worked, the Sixers wouldn't have won the game if Joel Embiid didn't take over, like, in the fourth quarter.
And
You
we'll
know what I
get to
mean? The
him.
zone was nice, but if Joel Embiid didn't take over and score the final 11 points, and if he didn't get that steal, you know what I mean? They would have been talking about how, yeah, we overcame that zone. You know what I mean? But
Well,
you're right, huh?
that's why you're a pro, man, because now that's going to be our segue into our next conversation, Joel Embiid and his return. 30 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals. We'll talk about it next. His return against the Atlanta Hawks tonight after missing 4 games. What his impact meant. How did they look with him on the floor? We'll break it all down next right here on Locked On 76ers. And as we do that, I got to tell you about Taro, the world's largest car sharing marketplace. Maybe you wanted to go to the game last night against Philadelphia and Atlanta, and you needed to find a way down to the sports complex here in Philadelphia. You didn't want to use your car. You didn't want to take a taxi cab. How dare you do that? Well, you go to Tiro. With Tiro, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip that you're going to do around the holiday time. It's coming up here shortly. Or get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get simply from A to B. Test drive the new electric vehicle you have had your eye on to see how it fits in your everyday life. If you're traveling around like Keith does, maybe visit one of the many Tiro hosts that can even deliver the car right to you when you land at your hotel in, let's say, Cleveland next up for Keith Pompey. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. That's Turo.com. Do it today so you don't miss out on that nice vehicle that you need. Thanks for making Locked On 76ers your first listen today. For your second, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with the local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Keith, the big fella, he was back, and he looked pretty good, especially in the second half. What did you make of his performance? It did, as you said, he looked a little not confused, but just more of trying to figure out where to fit in and not disrupt what the success that they had with Milton and Harris so far going forward. They did a lot of this stuff while he was out running the same type of offense, but those guys weren't hesitant and reluctant to make a move themselves and take over. And this one, what did you make of his performance and their performance off of him?
Yeah, it was crazy because I mean I liked it, but I didn't like it. I mean initially because it's like they're trying to run the same offense. The only difference is that Montrez and B-ball Paul Reed are more in the post. Joel was up in the perimeter, so it was kind of like guys would get the ball and then they would stop doing what they were doing and they would pass the ball out to him. And I felt like initially everybody looked uncomfortable. Like he looked uncomfortable because he was, I think instead of him being himself, he was making a conscious effort, like consciously thinking, I got to pass the ball. And what they were doing is, this is Joel, and I'm not going to dribble the ball. I'm going to give the ball to Joel. And it looked a little stagnant to me, like to be like, because it looked like they looked a little confused on what they were trying to do. And then you notice guys were driving to the lane, missing shots, things like that, right? But it got to a point where, the thing that stood out to me was that this is Joel Embiid's team. He's the unquestioned leader of the team. Heading into the season, there were some people who were considering, is it Joel? Was it James? I think that James is a leader, right? He's a leader of men. But I think when we get on the court, this is Joel's. Like, I mean, Joel scored, I believe. He
What was it
played.
about?
Hmm?
What was it about it that really stands out to make you say that right now that really sunk in for you that he's the
Oh,
unquestioned leader of
dog. Like, I mean, it's to a point where, I mean, I forget what the stat is, but Joel has scored 30 or more points in probably like 9 of 17 games. Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
9 of 17. I mean, like, and I get it. James had the 17 assists. He had 30 points going on early. But we got to understand it's like Joel is literally winning games for them. Like he scored the last 11 points. In one game, he scored 59 points, where he scored all but 1 point in the fourth quarter. So when I'm talking about stuff like that, um, uh, you know, when I'm talking about stuff like that, it's one of those things where, come on, man, he's the guy. Now, again, James is the leader, the vocal leader. He's the guy making sure when he was playing, making sure everything happened during practice. But when you look at Joel now, Joel is that guy, dude. He's the man of the team. Now, again, you want him to play more of a team ball, team setting, but we can't get it twisted. Like if Joel Embiid, the stuff that they did in these other games were great, but you're not winning the championship without Joel Embiid. You're just not. You're not. And the thing is, with him, the way he's dominating to me is just letting me know that he's the unquestioned leader of this team.
Couple of numbers here
Well, as
to
far as ball playing, huh?
with his latest 30-point game, he has now scored at least 20 points in his last 11. That ties him for the second longest active streak in the league. posted 20 or more in 12 of his 13 this season. And that stat is according to StatHead. And he also, as we talk about over the course of his career with the 76ers, 100 now, 22 career 30-point games. Ties him fourth with in franchise history with Dr. J. So, yeah, the guy's pretty good. The guy's pretty good. 13 appearances. He has 6 games of 35-5, Keith, so far this year. So when you talk about the unquestioned leader for this basketball team, I never questioned that. As far as the game goes, right, you mentioned it. He's not the vocal leader that we talk a lot about when it comes to some of these other teams where they lead that way and B maybe leads by example and leads by his performance on the court. He is the leader of the team. This is his team. No question from me. This is his franchise, and they go as he goes. And while Harden and Maxey are terrific players, and Tobias Harris in his own right, this is Joel Embiid's team. I don't think there's any question about it. But, yeah, I saw a lot of good things from him. Took him a while, as you mentioned, to get it going. But once he did in the second half, he really got it going. Got to the free throw line, 12 for 13. You need a guy, whenever you need to call his number at the end, Keith, and you got a big guy who's going to get fouled, it's always good to have a guy who can shoot over 80% from the free throw line, isn't it? When he goes to the line and knocks those down in a key situation. That play that he had after he made the jumper to give them the lead, 101-100 over DeJounte Murray. Weird defensive situation, by the way, by Atlanta, where Murray wound up on Embiid. And he took him right to the middle of the floor in the low block, knocked down like a 13-footer fadeaway and give them the lead. On the other end, Keith, we talk about the 30 points, but this is the shot that Trae Young gets a running start, feels like he has a lob attempt to John Collins, and Joel Embiid drops back a little bit into the coverage and messes the play up. He blocks the attempt on the pass, steal, whatever you want to call it, and picks up the loose ball, and that's when he goes and knocks down those 2 free throws to make it 103-100 and secure the win. So great offensive performance and that one big key defensive play.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? I mean, and that's what it is. And the thing is, the thing that stands out to me about Joel is, and I keep saying this over and over again, is one of those things where in the past he was always sluggish on the first game back. Always sluggish. That's not the case anymore. I mean, he was rusty, but he wasn't, what I mean by sluggish, not sluggish, out of shape. That's a better way. He wasn't out of shape. He wasn't out of shape when he returned from the flu, but in the past that used to always be that. So, I'm impressed by him. And the stats that you brought up too is, pretty good. Pretty good. I hate comparing people to.
Oh, no, and it wasn't a comparison. It was
no, it's a fact. But because you know why, and no offense, but like Nerlens Noel is my guy, but we was always comparing him to like Bill Russell and all this other stuff. And when you do stuff and you have these stats, it kind of like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like people look like, come on now, that ain't Bill Russell. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. You know what I mean? It just becomes crazy.
Where is Nerlens? He was with the Knicks. Where is he? Houston? I don't know.
I think he's in Dallas, right? No, he's not in Dallas. He's in Detroit. He's in Detroit. He's in Detroit. He's in the D. In the D.
Yeah, he got a contract from Detroit. Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. All right, man. Well, great stuff on Embiid. And one guy that we don't neglect him because we do talk about him, but we need to talk about him a little bit more. We're going to dedicate the final segment to him. He had 24 points, 10 rebounds tonight, and did a tremendous job for the Sixers to keep them afloat early on in the game, and that's Tobias Harris. We'll discuss his impact on the game as well right here next on Locked On 76ers. But I also have to tell you that as we get into the holiday season and jobs are picking up and you're looking for some great candidates as a small business owner, and these days every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for a small business. So you want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. Yes, LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and free. If I were looking for someone around the holiday season, I would most certainly go here to LinkedIn Jobs. And as I do so, make sure I'm looking for people that I feel confident are going to be able to do the job on time, the tardiness, all of those small things that mean a lot to a team that we put together for our small business and has a really good understanding of how we get things done with our company. Then, as we do that, and I put you can create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs. I would add, and I hope that you will, the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring, like I would if I were. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you like to interview and hire. You're going to finish strong at the end of this year, and you want to make sure you have the right people in place to start things the next season. So you want to have the right team members to help you out overall. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors, because we find the right people. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. One guy that's not looking for a job right now because he has one and he's doing it pretty well. It's Tobias Harris, doing a pretty good job, 24-10 in the victory over the Atlanta Hawks, Keith. And he has been on a pretty good stretch himself when everyone else has been out. He has played really well, high level, putting up some big numbers, leading the team, the only starter. And when he was out with those injuries to his, what was it, his hip, left hip soreness, all he did was come back and step right in. He has just been playing well. 28, 20, and 10 games in his career as a Sixer. The Sixers are 22-6 in those games, Keith, when he scores 20 and 10 in those games where they're 28 overall, 22-6. That again, according to StatHead. Third straight game of 20 points for him, and the fourth time he has done so in the last 5 appearances. During that span, 23.7 7 rebounds, Keith, for the 76ers. Just quietly going about his business, doing his job.
Yeah. You know what? It's one of those things where, I was always saying that when James comes back and Tyrese comes back, he's going to go back to being in the corner and doing all this other stuff, right? And I'm starting to think now that they need to get him more involved, right? I mean, and I understand that there's not a lot of like things that's going around, but Shake Milton has been on fire, but he's been on fire partly because of Tobias's leadership and telling them, I need you to do this, because Tobias is getting these guys moving the ball, passing the ball. I mean, he's been the constant out there. He has. And then also you look at it, like if Tobias Harris wasn't playing, as good as Shake Milton has been and all these other guys, Tobias is like, he hasn't always been the leading scorer, but if he wasn't the leading scorer, he was number 2, right? And I think that he's been, like I said, the constant out there. Now, Shake has been balling.
Tremendous.
Tremendous. But Tobias has been stepping up and doing things. I mean, there's been a lot of people critical of his contract, and there people are still going to say, like, you could question if he's a max player or not.
That's
But
old.
the way that he's playing recently, it makes people remind people of what he did when he was with the Clippers and why the Sixers went out and got him and why they paid him that money. They felt like they had to pay him that money because he's producing. He's producing.
So when you said, just the constant, someone that you can just count on, I go that same direction and say during this time, and even when James Harden got here, Tyrese Maxey took that next step in his development. Keith, I look at it and I say that he's just been a professional and also a professional scorer in this case. And the key is the ball moves and they find him and the ball finds him. And he's taking advantage of those extra touches, those opportunities that he's getting. And as we talk about Shake Milton, DeAnthony Melton, George Niang, Paul Reed, Montrezl Harrell, maybe even Furkan Korkmaz, when Harden and Maxey come back now that Embiid is there, we talk about Doc Rivers and the coaching staff figuring something out when it comes to the depth of the team and how deep they can go, and adding those players into the mix of the rotation, and trusting that he can call their numbers. I also look at the Tobias Harris piece, as you mentioned, and it's also for the coaching staff and his teammates, specifically Embiid and Harden, that we can count on Tobias. We can call a play for Tobias, and he might go out there and execute the play just like he has been doing over this course of these few games here. So I agree. I tip my cap to him with what he's been able to do, keeping them afloat while those other guys are out. And when they come back, there's no reason to not find him some more touches throughout the game.
Yeah, you're right. And like we're saying, might. I think he can make the play. I think that he's made the plays before. I just think that a lot of times, I equate to some of the stuff we're seeing with PJ Tucker, where people are real critical of him. And as you mentioned it, like sometimes he gets the ball late and he goes up and he doesn't have a rhythm, a flow, and his shot just looks crazy, right? It just looks crazy. And I think a lot of that has to do with Tobias. Like, you're so used to, we think about it. He was a McDonald's All-American in high school. He was a one and done at Tennessee. He goes to Milwaukee. He was a young rookie, but he goes to Orlando. He's the man. He goes to Detroit. He's the man. He goes to the Clippers. And then all of a sudden, it's like you're playing a third role where you're not touching the ball. You're not doing anything. A lot of people can't do that, D. And then when you get the ball, it's kind of like, it's like a hot potato, because it's kind of like, okay, what do I do with it? Now, but here's the one thing. The one thing is, like, there are certain players who are defensive minded, who like don't have to touch the ball, who can be like a stellar 3-and-D type of guy.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are other guys who are used to being extremely ball dominant, and a lot of them can't deal with it. And he has shown that he has.
That's why I called him a pro.
Yep, a pro. Yep, a pro. Yep.
Yeah. So, I wasn't knocking him by saying he might. I mean, you're not going to make every shot.
No. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, that wasn't a knock. I'm just saying, I just feel like he can. But some of the shots that he missed, I feel like we look at, because like right now, like people are looking like, oh wow. I mean, and they're doing the same thing with like Shake. Like, people forget. Like, I mean, we could talk about this later, but there was a stretch right before the bubble where Shake could do no wrong.
That's why it was an easy call, where we were discussing, should he remain in the starting lineup when Ben came back with him in the backcourt.
Yeah, exactly. And remember, Ben slid to the power forward
and keep JJ in the starting lineup with Shake and Ben and Joel and Tobias, and go to work. Yeah, absolutely.
It was crazy. So, and it's one of those things. So the good thing, this was a blessing, but you're right. Doc has, and I guess we could talk about that tomorrow, but Doc has a tough job now with this. He got to figure it out.
And guess what? These guys were on the roster at the beginning of the year, so he knew they were there. So the depth hasn't changed. It's just more of giving them the opportunity.
And that's funny, because I remember one time, and we'll talk more about it, but one time I forget, we were maybe in North Carolina or somewhere, but we were on the road, and it was recent. This, sometimes the days we running together, right? And I asked him, I said, Doc, like, are guys seeing you stuff? Are you seeing stuff that they're doing and they're showing you stuff and proving to you? He said, nah, we see them in practice. We see them this and that. And I'm like, huh? Like because it's like, to a point, like, yo, the stuff that I'm seeing with some of these dudes, they look really good. But but then I guess everyone can't play. But they got it tough, man. They got to make decisions.
Yeah, he will definitely have to make a decision. So, well, listen, man, as always a fun one. And look, 3 games in a row that they've won, and pretty good win over the Atlanta Hawks, as you mentioned. We want to thank everybody for making Locked On 76ers your first listen. For your next one, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Well, Keith, I told them where they can get our podcast. Where else can they find us?
Well, definitely tomorrow night or tonight they're gonna find you from 10:15 to midnight on the Divine Giving Show, right? Also you can find my man D on Twitter. So make sure you follow D at Divine G975. You can also follow me on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers. And you can go to Enquirer.com and you can read my piece about Shake Milton, and
Shake.
you can read my takeaways from to last night's game, on where I'm saying, Embiid's the unquestioned leader. I'm talking about Matisse Thybulle. We didn't really get into him, but where he's the elite defender and what he did. And also Tobias Harris needs to get more touches.
All
All
right,
right.
make sure you check him out, Enquirer.com. That's Keith Pompey, Sixers beat writer extraordinaire. And we'll be back tomorrow, talk a little more hoops with you for the 76ers as they prepare for another 3-game road trip. Keith, thanks, man.
Thank you, bro.
Talk
Peace.
to you all.
Peace.